Hello and welcome to tonight's show. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show will begin in 5 minutes. Let's make some noise!
Let's do this!
Hello.
Hi, Ritchie. How are you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. I saw you there already in the pre-show.
It's so great to be here, and it's so great for everybody who's watching live right now, and those who watch later. But it's so great for everybody to join us, and we're just super excited. Episode 1 of season 3 is kicking off now.
Yes, it is. We've been feverishly working on all the changes and news and additions to the show, and we are really happy that we can finally kick this off and not only talk in theory and announce changes, but actually do them. So it's great
Yes.
that so many of you have tuned in, and yeah, we are super happy to have you with us and looking forward to what's about to unfold in the show. So, where's everybody watching from? We've got some nice comments already, and we've been able to chat a little bit with everyone beforehand, but time goes by so quickly. So, hit us up in the comments where you're from, where you're tuning in from. Are you new? Are you, an old shoe? Let us know, and let's get this party started.
If you've been watching since season 1, let us know. If you've been watching since season 2, let us know. If you're just now starting on season 3, we want to know that too. So, in the past, we have done flags, but we weren't very good at that. But feel free to include your country's flag if you want, and that's always fun. And be sure to chat with each other in the comments, not just chatting with us, but building this community. You guys are becoming friends, and we're becoming friends with you, and all this stuff. So it's really great. Hello,
Yes,
Joe.
yes,
Good
absolutely.
morning.
Great points there, Ritchie. Absolutely. And speaking of chatting to each other, also, if you're watching this and you know someone else who might be interested to join in, it's never too late then to invite them and send them a link. We, are happy to welcome everyone here on the show. And, while we are warming up and getting ready for everyone to hopefully learn something today.
Yep.
Apart from the answer to the trivia question. We've got quite a number of things that we've prepared for you, and we are, raring to get going with those. Hi, Andreas. It's good to have you with us as well. Nice of you to join us. And Dan is also back. He's on lunch break. Great stuff.
Hello, Dan.
A lot of familiar names and faces, which is great. There's also Subography, who's tuned in from Norway. Hello.
Hello.
Let's do this. I like it.
Oh,
Björn.
yeah.
Björn's online relationship is complicated. And I can show off with some flags here. He is sitting in Dubai, but he's from Belgium. Ha!
There you go. But where is he at right now? That's the question. Is he could be, out over the ocean, or you never know. So
you never quite know. Excellent. All right. We've asked a trivia question already in the countdown, and the question was, which was the first commercially successful make of camera to use a 35 millimeter film? And we didn't have too many guesses yet. We, maybe things are new and you're not quite sure yet, or maybe the fingers aren't quite warmed up. I'm not quite sure. But I think that was kind of like an easy question.
Is it though? Because I have a question about it.
Oh, okay.
Is it specifically talking about still photography, or is it talking about any camera, the first camera of any sort to use 35 millimeter film? Because 35 millimeter film was originally a motion picture stock. So
You're
was
overthinking.
there a So was there a commercially successful cinema camera prior to the first stills camera that could be the answer?
Yes. I think let's keep it simple and let's not overthink it. We have two very good guesses, or if there are guesses, I don't know. And then there is a third one, which is great. Any other guesses out there? Who else wants to take a turn before we reveal what the answer is? Like I said, we've got lots of things to talk about, so I'm quite keen to get going on those. But if we have another guest, then please shoot it our way. There's absolutely nothing you can win other than the certainty that you know or didn't know something. And you walk away a little bit richer in knowledge.
Yes, that's the prize.
Yeah, that's the prize. But if we don't have any more guesses, then I think let's reveal the answer. And it is indeed Leica. That is, what I guess is a good introduction to Jan, Enrico, and Dan all got it right. Good for you.
Yay! Yep.
And Dan even
They know their history.
Yes, has a little bit of extra information there on top of it. It's quite an interesting story, and you should read up about it if you haven't. The birth of a carry-around camera has quite a long history, which is really great and fascinating. So thank you all for playing along and for letting us.
We appreciate all the guesses.
Richard, yes. Thank you. And now, I don't know about you, Ritchie, but I want to do this exactly, subography.
Yeah, let's do this.
Let's do this. Let's hop right in today's topic. And before we actually speak about the details, we just wanted to explain in case someone is new or did not watch the last episode yet, what we've changed, because I think we've made quite some substantial changes to the show, and you will see that tonight's or today's show is what we call a theme show, where we introduce a specific topic or genre, where we then talk about specifics. But you will have noticed that there is another show scheduled for this month, for the last Thursday of the month. And that is where we've made space for you. Isn't it, Ritchie? We always felt like we don't really have enough time for everything. We want to, connect with you, and we want to introduce recipes, and we want to give, as good advice as we can. But the chatting, we feel like it fell a little bit short.
Yeah, so the first Thursday of the month will be doing more of the introducing the theme, and me and Nathalie will be doing a lot of the talking and discussing it and getting into the technical details. And then in the fourth Thursday of the month, we'll have another show where we'll be more interactive, hopefully have some guests. So let us know if you want to be a guest on the show. We'd love to have you. And we'll be taking a lot more questions, and it'll be less formal, a little bit more informal discussion of how it all went. We'll be showing your pictures. So we've kind of just taken the format and cut it in half and separated it. And so you'll have two shows now. the first Thursday of the month, which is what we're doing now, and the fourth Thursday of the month, which will be a few weeks from now.
Exactly. So let's start with our theme of the month, which is, as I'm sure you know, street photography.
Yay!
So I'm sure we are all in the same boat here. We love street photography. I am sure that from who's tuned in, there are a number of people who actively shoot in the streets. It's kind of like what brought us here. But maybe you're new to street photography. Maybe you have not been shooting recipes. Maybe all of this is new. Maybe you're new to Fujifilm. And if you watch this as a recording, then maybe you've come across it because you are interested in street photography. So we thought we have a look and give a bit of an introduction into street photography and really look at the topic from all sorts of angles before we go any further with that. So we broken up the episode into a couple of parts that we thought were useful. So first of all, we want to just talk about the topic in general.
Yeah, and then after that, we're going to talk specifically about film simulation recipes that we recommend using for this genre of photography.
Yes, exactly. We wouldn't obviously do away with the recipes, would we now?
Yep.
and then we are challenging you to photograph with these recipes, but we've added a couple of extras to this. So we don't only want you to shoot with the recipes only, but we will always have some additional what we call challenges to add to shooting with that and the kind of images that we want you to upload.
Yeah, and then after that, we'll have a question and answer time. So even though the next episode is when we'll really get into the discussion of it, we do have some time allotted for any questions you may have for today. So if you have any questions, be sure to type them out now in the comments or throughout the show, and then at the end, we'll get to them.
Yes, but please keep in mind that Ritchie and I are trying really hard to keep these shows a little bit briefer, which is why we made 2 of them. So you will get a really good opportunity to ask a lot of questions in the next episode. So if you have a burning question, please, by all means, ask them at the end of the show.
Yeah, and we're here for you. So, whatever we can do to help you, we want to do. So don't hesitate to ask any questions you may have.
Yes, never hesitate. And so what we want to do first is we are going to talk about street photography in general. We will look at what it actually is. We will talk a little bit about gear and what kind of approaches you can take in street photography, and throw a little bit of food for thought into the mix as well.
Since we're talking about recipes and everything too, so we have to have food for thought.
Yes, good point. Exactly. So I think let's dive right in what street photography actually is. So to start off with a really straightforward street scene, it's shooting candid, whatever you come across when you are actually on the street, and any kind of encounters that you may have and find there.
Yeah, and it's basically chance encounters in public places, which could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be in the street per se. For example, this was at an amusement park.
All right. I really like all the different expressions, including the back there. Nice one. You could try and capture different kind of things that you encounter, including silhouettes, which in street photography play quite a big role.
It could be in a business or outside a store. It doesn't have to be necessarily out in a strictly public place like a park or the streets, but even inside of a business is or just outside of a business is game.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think a lot of people think, well, if it's not, if the street is not visible in the picture, then it's not street photography. But I
Yeah.
think, we can take it quite a bit broader than that.
Yes.
And quite popular is also to play with windows, to look into a place where people are. Or you could be outside and you could, observe whatever it is that humans, society, people are doing, how they're interacting with the environment, be it with another person or by themselves. Just like this dude there. I'm not sure if it's necessarily all that visible, but I did want to point out because I really like this picture because as you can see, he kind of like shows off his, I don't know, we call it plumber's crack. I don't know if it is, if that
That might be a universal term, you know.
is it. Okay, it's not a South Africanism. Yes, and underneath on that block where he sits, it's written open. So I quite enjoy that. So just
Little humor.
a little bit of humor on the side.
Yeah, it could be just people going about their day doing their jobs, you know, like this guy here is doing the trash truck, you know. So it doesn't have to be just people going about their leisure. It can be people going about their daily life or whatever that is.
Yeah, it's kind of like whatever captures your eye whenever people are interacting one way or another,
Hmm.
I guess. And it doesn't always have to be in a big city. I think you get this question often, Ritchie, where people think, oh, I can't take images like this because I live in a small town or whatever. But street photography is really about, being in contact or observing humans, and they, candidly acting or reacting to something in the environment. So it can be a small town like this was a very rural place somewhere in Mozambique. So definitely not a big city.
Yeah, and actually, I kind of like small towns for street photography.
Yes, they give you a bit more space to do your thing. Not everything has to be Lower Manhattan. I
Yeah,
think. Sorry, I'm advanced the slide there a little bit too quickly already. But yeah, I think a lot of street photography also carries a bit of humor in it, or a bit of something to smile about, think about. So being on the
yeah,
lookout for.
definitely. If there's a little bit of whimsy or something in it, that's
Mm,
good.
yeah,
And it doesn't even have to include people. A lot of uh, ideas about street photography is that there has to be people in the photographs, and I would say that's not true. It can be just interesting things that you come across, or showing the effects of humans in the environment without actually showing humans. It could be space aliens. So, you know.
Yes, I absolutely love this photograph. There is so much going on in this. This is fantastic. And yeah, I mean, you could have told us that these were like actual aliens lining up or something. But it's absolutely brilliant. And there's a lot of
Nice.
humor in this as well. So it's
Yeah.
not just about people.
And it's a small town. So it's a very small town.
Okay. So a many layered photograph example.
Yep. And street photography is great after dark too. A lot of times it's done in the day, but after the sun goes down is a great opportunity as well.
Yes, and it gives opportunity to play around with so many different aspects of life. I mean, I guess
Hmm.
one of the more obvious ones is nightlife, out on the streets, street
Yeah.
cafes and stuff, which makes for some interesting, different kind of ways to capture or aspects in the photograph, like the smoke from the hubbly bubbly, or
Hmm.
lights that are always nice to capture in different kinds of tones to your photograph, I guess, which we will get into later when we speak about the different recipes.
Yeah. And I would say that there's no definitive definition of what exactly street photography is, but hopefully all these images give you a pretty good idea if you're not sure of what we mean by street photography.
Yes, and I don't think we are, we are too strict on it. I'm sure there are different lines of thought out there, but we obviously want to make sure that, you go out and photograph as much as possible and get as much opportunity as possible. So no matter where you live and what opportunities you have, you can definitely, go out and take some sample pictures and, take part in our challenge.
Yes.
So apart from these sample pictures, we also have other tips, and we wanted to showcase those also alongside of sample images. So there are a number of more images that we are going to show, and we are going to demonstrate along those, what kind of gear tips we have for you that help you create great street photography images.
Yeah. And I think, first of all, I look at my favorite cameras for street photography are the compact ones like the X100 series. I use X100V and absolutely love that for street photography. X70 is another one that's pretty good. But I think small, lightweight gear that maybe you can even put in your pocket, it's no big deal to carry around, isn't real obvious, it doesn't make people nervous, and that kind of thing is most ideal, in my opinion.
Yes, and absolutely versatile, and you can quickly grab it. You don't need to think about what other lenses or other gear you need to add to it. So it's always at the ready, which especially for street photography is absolutely valuable, because you never quite know when you encounter something. I mean, especially if you are lucky enough to use public transport, then there are a lot of opportunities that may arise, and you just never know while you're on the way to something,
Yes.
necessarily planning to take some photographs.
Always have a camera.
Always have a camera.
Yeah.
And next up, I think quite importantly is, or what I recommend is shooting silently. I've actually gone to the point where I pretty much shoot in silent mode all the time, because it's just a lot more pleasant, unless, technical requirements need me to turn the silent mode off. But otherwise, I just really enjoy it because it's so much less disruptive, and you can, get into a space of people without interrupting them also, which makes for a
Yeah,
much experience.
and I think like the X100 series has the leaf shutter. So cameras with a leaf shutter, their mechanical shutter's silent, and so that's great. For those that don't have a leaf shutter, the mechanical shutter can make a loud noise, and of course, if you're trying to be stealthy in your street photography, and then the person hears the shutter, they might give you a funny look or worse. So, and then it just being disruptive, like your wonderful picture here, you're just blending in. Your camera is like a complete non-issue for the people that are there. But if it was being loud, obviously it would be a different story. But of
Yes.
course, if it does have a mechanical shutter that's not a leaf shutter, and you use silent mode, it means you're using an electronic shutter, and there's considerations for that. I think depending on how the movement is, or the light, sometimes you can get weird effects and stuff. But in daylight, in normal conditions, it's no issue at all. And I definitely, if you don't have like an X100 series camera and you put it in silent mode, I think you're going to be fine for most situations.
Yes, absolutely. It's all a trial and error, obviously, depending on what in general you shoot and what is important for you.
Yes.
In addition to that, my favorite part of the camera, apart from the I guess the camera parts itself is the tilt screen. And I've had so many opportunities recently where I just keep on hearing myself talk about this tilt screen and the tilt screen, but it's really opening up the opportunity to, take pictures from many different angles. And I guess I like it. I do like shooting very low down because it gives a different perspective that you don't normally see when you walk around, you know, with your naked eye. So I think that makes for quite some interesting imagery. And it also gives you the opportunity to observe things without being too obvious that you're taking photographs.
Yep, I agree with that. And another tip is if you have gear that has the hybrid viewfinder like the X100 or X Pro series, you can use the optical viewfinder to see what is outside the frame, so you can time it when it's coming into the frame. You can better see it. If not, then you can shoot with one eye on the camera and the other eye open. That's another option. Have both eyes open. But yeah, if you do have a hybrid viewfinder, that's a great tool that you can use to better anticipate the decisive moment.
Yes, something that, as much as I'd like the theory of it, but I don't quite get that right. So I admire people who can do that, who can focus on what's in the frame and out the frame through a viewfinder all at the same time. So it's definitely a great tool for how to use it.
Yep.
And then there are obviously different lenses. If you're not shooting with a fixed lens camera, then you can, use wide lenses because you want to capture a lot of what you're observing. Because you're in streets, you often have big buildings or big scenes where you want to capture as much as possible. So wide lenses are definitely a good choice.
Yeah, I think another common focal length is just the standard lens. Basically, what the eye sees in the Fujifilm world, that's about 27 to 35 millimeter, which is equivalent to about 40 to 55 millimeter, roughly. That gives you just the standard look. It's very classic. It's not as dramatic as wide angle. I like the drama that a wide angle lens, especially like a really wide angle lens, can give you. But this gives a more natural view, and so that's another option.
Yes, it gives a very authentic image because it is very relatable. It does look like you are actually the one who's looking at that scene,
Yes.
not necessarily at a picture.
And then, of course, if you want to compress it, you use a telephoto lens. I think this is a little less common in street photography, but it's worth giving a try. Being further away and just bringing the scene to you through the lens, is a good way to fill the screen with everything that's going on and throughout the layers of where you're at.
Yes, I think this is really interesting, and at first may not be an obvious choice. Obviously, also because when you're walking around with a telephoto lens, you're walking around with a bigger camera and are more visible. But because you're further away, you're still, can maybe observe situations without, sticking out all that much. And it gives you, like you said, just a different view, and you are able to maybe also, get a closer look of someone doing something a little bit further.
Yeah.
So it's definitely.
Yeah, I would say it's a lot. Yeah, I would say it's a lot less common for people to use telephoto lenses in street photography, but it's also very interesting.
Yes, so it's definitely worth giving that a try. Yes, but gear is not all that makes the photograph. There are also different ways that we go about capturing the actual image. And I'm going to hand over to you, Ritchie, first. You have a couple of ways on how you approach street photography in general.
Yeah, there's basically three approaches that I take, and one is just to wander around with the camera. You just walk and see what you find. You don't stay in one place very long, and you just take the sidewalks and streets wherever they go and just find interesting things. For example, this picture here, I was walking along, saw this guy, he missed the train, and now he's running after it, trying to catch it at the next stop, I think. And so as I was walking, he was running the other way, and I was able to get the camera out, snap the picture, and keep moving on. That's probably the technique I use the most. I wouldn't say that it's the most successful, but that's just what I do most often.
Yeah, I think
And
that
then the
kind of the classical approach to what people think street photography is. You just kind of like wander around and take pictures when you see something interesting.
yeah, I think probably the most successful street photography in general is the next technique, which is you find something interesting, and then you sit there and you wait for somebody to walk through or something interesting to happen. So in this case, I saw the poster, the reflection in the window, and then I just waited there until somebody walked by, and then I took a picture. So I really like this technique. I don't do it nearly as often as I should because when I do use it, I tend to get stronger pictures. So we have this one, and then we have the next picture, kind of just the same technique. I saw the reflection in this window, so I just stood there and waited for some people to walk by, and then snapped a picture where you can see them on both sides. And then this one here, I saw the posters on the wall saying "Don't tear it down." Thought it was interesting, so I just waited there for somebody to walk through, and it just so happens to be this person carrying some sort of newspaper that says "flat" on it, and I thought that was super interesting. It just happened. I didn't even notice it when I took the picture. It was actually later that I read what it said and how appropriate it was. And so that's the technique that I don't do often enough. Always seem to get really good results with it, and I would definitely encourage you to try it if in the next several weeks. At least try it once.
Yeah, I guess you need to take some more time. You need to dedicate time to first of all find the place, or maybe you have a place in mind already, but then you need to kind of like wait and see what happens, and maybe nothing happens, and then you need to come back another time.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah. It requires patience.
yes, but it pays off, as we can
Yeah.
see.
And then the last technique is you find somebody, maybe they look interesting or maybe they don't, but you just follow them around until they put themselves in a position that makes for an interesting picture. Like this guy here, carrying a bag, maybe isn't that interesting, but once he stopped right there, I was able to get his reflection in the window and create an interesting picture. I don't like this technique. It's probably my least favorite because, first of all, you kind of are like a stalker. So it could be a little creepy, people wondering why are you following me around, and also you generally get people's backsides. So it can be interesting. It can produce good pictures sometimes. It's just another way to do it. It's probably my least favorite, but occasionally it does pay off.
Hmm. Well, you know what I like in this picture is not only that it has a reflection in the window, but there's also the double shadow. Um,
Yeah.
created. So that is obviously really cool. And I guess if you are in a busier place, this is an easier technique to practice because you blend into the crowd, first of all. Secondly, you have more people who may interact. I'm thinking of
Mhm.
like a lot of people walking on the sidewalk and one person is crossing the other one and they're giving each other a look of some sort or whatever because
Yeah.
maybe they bumped each other or what have you. So those kinds of scenarios, I think if you then follow a person, there's interesting scenes that you could potentially encounter.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like had a different idea in addition to that, just to give you also, different starting points. Apart from, wandering around, you could also, see if you find interesting colors. this happened to, you know, be a nice play on you know, a repetition of colors, or also repetition of anything. So anything that's, you know, kind of like interesting to the eye. And then I guess it is similar to finding an interesting scene and then seeing what happens. But just to capture that as well could be an interesting starting point. Or you can go out and observe light and shadow, which is often very strong in street photography because, you know, you may be walking around in very harsh light because now it's, you know, lunchtime and you're on break, and you can use that to your advantage. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but just to see how the light falls, and then you can wait for someone to move into the right place wherever light streaks are, for example, or harsh shadows that you can play with, which is
And
also
I was gonna say, and also, you know, look for those leading lines and everything. Like in this, you have that green line from the top left that it just points right to. You just follow that, and the black line that is parallel with it, with the light string of light on it, just leads right to the subject. That almost blends in. You almost don't even notice him at first, but just leads you right to the subject. And that's stuff like that is really good to look for.
yes, exactly. Or you could find messages around, be them on posters that are plastered somewhere, or on people's clothing. So they make for quite interesting ways to capture whatever is happening on the streets. And even maybe a bigger word and topic that is being used in street photography a lot is juxtaposition. So you find something interesting where a person is either complementing or the opposite of it in one picture, and you capture that. So that made for quite interesting messages as well. So I thought it was quite interesting how these girls posed there. Maybe they saw the message on the wall, or they didn't. I'm not quite sure. And then the fact that this other lady has this "Hey you" written on it was just like, you know, the speech bubbles competition.
Yep.
So
That's funny.
yeah, if
And
you
this is a humorous. This is another example of a humorous
yeah,
picture.
I like funny, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But also similar to what Ritchie was explaining, when you are looking at a certain scene and you stand and you wait for it, you may have something in mind that you want your photograph to look like. For example, in this case, I was in Vietnam, and there are people riding bicycles everywhere, and they all wear these hats, and they all have lots of stuff on their bicycles. And I, you know, I don't know, woke up one day and I'm like, today I'm photographing someone riding a bicycle. And I came across this scene, and I, you know, loved the earthy colors in the background and these statues of these ladies there. And then I just stood there and I waited. And I had in my head what kind of a photograph I wanted to create. So this is, you know, an example as to, I knew beforehand what I wanted. I think the travel guide that we had for Vietnam had something like this on the cover, and I'm like, I need to come back with one of those. So, you know, that's another way of going about it. And then, of course, you need to have fun. I always like to, you know, have a little bit of fun and just experiment and see what things you can create while you're out and about in the street. Maybe on a day when there are absolutely no people, or there is something funny going on, or you are out too late, or what have you, and then you think of other things, how you can create some images while you're in the streets. Anything
Yeah,
goes.
and that's so great. Like using a slow shutter speed, and looks like you kind of did like a twirly motion or something. You know,
Yeah.
that's really good.
Yeah, a bit of a shaky hand there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so just a lot of different ways how you can go about trying to interact with your environment and capture different scenarios. But while Ritchie and I were talking about this, we also thought, okay, well, we are asking you to go out and take street photographs and interact with the environment. And so we thought it's, only just right that we point out something without going too much into detail into this.
Yeah, and I think every place has different laws, different customs, and you really want to familiarize yourself with that before you go out and do street photography. You want to know what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in your area. And it's going to be different from location to location to location. So just make sure that you're well aware of that before you start out. And in different places, the laws are different, the customs are different, but there's some things that we wanted to kind of just, bring up, not telling you what is right or wrong, but just to explain, if you see street performers, for example, should you take their picture? If you see children or babies or anything like that. And so just wanted to discuss that a little bit, and just give you some ideas, some food for thought, some things to think about, I guess.
Yes, exactly. And just to, I guess to make you a little bit more mindful about what kind of photographs you're taking. Also, where you are. Maybe you're in an unfamiliar place and then you don't know the rules, like we were saying. So I use this example here. This is Nairobi. Rules are quite strict about shooting in public places. And there are a lot of, I think all over the world, a lot of places where you shouldn't necessarily be taking your photograph. So if you're not shooting in your hometown, make sure you are familiar with the rules. And I guess see.
Yeah, is it okay to photograph children? I know that a lot of the iconic street photography of the past, that children are a big part of it. So, but is that kind of creepy? Is that you have to think about, it's important to think about these things before you do it and figure out what are you comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with.
Exactly. So I guess it's especially when we're talking about the vulnerable people. So, it's at the end of the day, everybody's decision what they do with it. But I think we really wanted to land here and
Yes.
specifically.
And what you don't really see in this picture very clearly is that there's a photographer right underneath the hand and the number 7 on the crosswalk. He's doing some street photography right there, and so I flipped the tables and I photographed him right doing street photography, and so the thought was with this is, what if the tables were turned? What would you be comfortable with? What of somebody photographing you, photographing your family? If you were that person on the other side, how would you feel? And so we just thought, the best rule is the golden rule, and to treat others how you want to be treated.
Yes, I guess it's a really good way to go about things. And so keep that in the back of your mind as you jump into creating some street photographs. But all the gear and all the approaches are all good and well. But we also obviously want to talk a little bit more about recipes.
Yes.
So we've taken the section that we've used in previous shows, and we want to suggest a couple of recipes similar to what we've done before in our special occasions section before. And we now want to give you the option of shooting with different recipes that we think are good for street photography. And those are the recipes that we want you to capture and then share with us in the next coming episode.
So instead of just having one recipe per episode, we were going to have several. In this one we have 4 that we're going to talk about. We're going to ask you to shoot with at least one of them. That's going to be part of the challenge, is to do street photography with 1, 2, 3, or even all 4 of these film simulation recipes, and upload your pictures that we'll share in the next episode in a few weeks. And we're going to take a closer look at each of these.
Yes, so we've got some sample pictures, but maybe if you want, you can take a screenshot of this to have a reference. We'll get back to these recipes after we've looked at the samples, but just to give you an idea as to what kind of images you can expect with the different recipes, in case you're unfamiliar with them.
Yeah, and and just really quick, you can find these recipes on the Fuji X Weekly website and the Fuji X Weekly app if you don't know where to get them.
Yes, and we put a link in the description as well to all the recipes, so it's quick and easy to get to them.
Yeah, and so here is just, using a Kodachrome 64 recipe to get some of those bright colors that Paul Simon sung about, way back in the 70s, Greens of Summer and all that stuff.
Yes, yeah, an absolute classic that I think makes the recipe really shine with these beautiful cyan skies, and it gives you this nice warm look when you go about, shooting street in the afternoon sun.
Yep. And then classic Kodak is just it's not that much dissimilar from Kodachrome 64, but it is more vibrant, a little more warm, a little bit less contrasty.
Yes, and I find this so interesting that you said that, because even though the colors here are possibly, the way you're looking at them, a little bit more pronounced than they are in the real picture, but I felt that the punch that this recipe gives is just the nice amount of punch to colors that you find in the streets. And it is just enough less contrasty to be, different enough from Kodachrome 64. I mean, we love Kodachrome, but this is a really interesting recipe to try out as well. If you like something a little bit less contrast.
Yeah. And especially if there's vibrant colors that you're trying to portray.
Yes.
And we said earlier that, street photography can be done at night. And for that, any night street photography, Sears 500T is a really good one to use.
Yes, I absolutely love that as well. I think it brings out this evening feel, and, obviously has a lot of blue contrast in it, but it makes night pictures just gives it enough of this interesting feel to it. So definitely worth a try.
And then, so much street photography, especially the classic street photography, is in black and white. So we wanted to have a good black and white recipe. And so we got Agfa Scala.
Yes, we did. And I'm sure everybody thought, why didn't they choose Tri-X 400? And we talked about this, but we had, in case you don't know, the first episode of last season was dedicated to that recipe. And we just felt, it had a very good innings, and we haven't given enough time for Agfa Scala yet. So we really to introduce you to something a little bit different. So definitely a nice recipe to give you a different look and a beautiful black and white look with, nice contrast, and worth giving a try.
Yep.
So to round it up, we thought we'll give you a bit of guidance as to when you can use these recipes and when they shine. So, our Kodachrome 64 shines a lot because we love it so much.
Yeah, it's if you're looking for iconic street photography colors, think Steve McCurry and that kind of thing. Kodachrome 64 is the recipe that you want to use. And the one that we have highlighted here is the for the newer X-Trans 4 cameras. So X100V, X Pro 3, XT4, XS10, XT4, and XT32. There is a version for the XT3 and XT30, and also a version for X-Trans 5, so the XH2, the XH2S, and the XT5. So if you have any of those cameras, you're covered. Find the appropriate Kodachrome 64 recipe for your camera. It's particularly great for daylight colors, especially, making all the world seem like it's a sunny day or whatever Paul Simon said. But if it's sunny, this is a really good recipe. And but if you're trying to do it at night, indoors under weird artificial lights and stuff like that, it's probably not your best choice.
No, absolutely. You will find that out very quickly, and you won't do it again. Yes,
well, it could be interesting though.
Yeah, but it's definitely a great recipe to use. And as you hear Ritchie say, you can choose any recipe that fits to the camera that you have. So we want to be very inclusive, and we are not particularly about this version of the recipe. But we have also classic Kodak, which, we already said it's kind of similar, but it isn't.
Yeah, it's still going to have like that Kodak feel to it, but it's a little different rendering. It's more vibrant. It's a little more warm. It's a little less contrast. So it's a different rendering, and definitely if you are, trying to capture those really vibrant colors, this is one you want to try. Also, if there's bright highlights that you're trying to keep in check, this recipe is a little better than the Kodachrome 64 for that. So if you're trying to capture kind of like a subdued, muted, maybe a low contrast scene with muted colors and stuff, if that's what you're trying to portray, this recipe will not do well for that, because it's going to make it warm and vibrant.
Yeah, but it's...
And also to mention the cameras that it's for X-Trans 3 plus the XT3 and XT30. If you have a newer camera than that, you'll have to decide on grain size, set clarity to 0, color chrome effects to off, and then you can use it on the newer cameras.
Yes. Give it a try. It was not my favorite when you first started out. But especially for street photography, when you get it right with classic Kodak, you really get it right with classic Kodak. It's really, really nice.
So it grew on you a little bit over time.
It grew on me a lot, actually, a lot more than I think I want to admit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's night photography.
Yeah, and so Series 500T, it's going to have a strong blue cast, so it's not a real good option for daylight pictures. But if you've got warm light, whether it be outdoors or indoor artificial light situations and that kind of thing, it's a really good one to try. It's going to be cool, colors. The blues are going to really stand out in it. And it just has such a beautiful rendering, especially in warm light. It is for the newer X-Trans 4 cameras, so the X100V, X Pro 3, XT4, XS10, XE4, and XT32. Specifically what that recipe is for.
Yes, and I am really excited actually that we can include not your kind of like traditional film looky sort of recipes that we've been talking about a lot in the last season, because choosing a specific recipe like this only by itself would have been really difficult with the format that we had last year, but this year we can. So I'm very excited to try that out a lot more, and I hope you are too.
Yep.
And then obviously we can also include a lot more black and white, which, has fallen a little bit short. So I'm super excited to give the Agfa Scala a little bit of a run for its money.
Yeah, and this one's really good. Agfa Scala was a black and white slide film. They recently reintroduced it. I think it's a slightly different emulsion, but for a while you couldn't even, if you had it, you couldn't even get it developed. And but it's contrasty. The highlights clip pretty easily, and that's one issue with the recipe is if you are shooting with bright highlights, you got to be careful to prevent them from clipping. You can reduce the exposure to keep them in check. It's really good for just showcasing light and shadow and that kind of contrast. Um, yeah, and it's for X-Trans 3 cameras plus the XT3 and XT30. So that's what that recipe is for. If you have a newer camera, you have to decide on grain size, set clarity to 0, and color chrome effects to off.
So it definitely is totally doable to shoot this recipes with newer cameras.
Yes.
Not a deal breaker at all.
Yes.
So go and try them and have a lot of fun. And shoot these images together with or in concert with our challenge that we thought
Yes.
of. So we thought, just going about and shooting with one recipe is, we've been doing this for long enough now. We need to, challenge you a little bit more into doing something a little bit different. So we thought of a kind of like a layered approach in a way. So yes, obviously we want you to go out and shoot recipes. And if this is all you want to do because you think, no, I really want to, that's more than good enough for me, then we will gladly take your images and show them in the next episode. But if you want, if you are hungry for more, then we have more.
Yeah, so we have 3 layers of challenges. The first one is pick 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of those recipes and shoot some street photography with it. And then if you want to up that to the next level, we have some challenges for you. And if you want to even go up even one more level, we have an additional challenge as well.
Yes, so we want you to go into the streets and we want you to look for silhouettes and we want you to look for reflections. And if you can add them together in one image, shooting it with a specific recipe, that would be first prize. So go and look for those situations.
Yeah, and I guess just to be clear, it's silhouettes or reflections. Not necessarily both, but if you do happen to be able to capture both in one image, that's a huge bonus, I guess.
Yes, we will play an extra applause for you in the next episode. So see if you can get it right. I mean, Ritchie and I were also going out. We are challenging ourselves as well, or each other. I'm not quite sure which one.
I challenge you, Nathalie.
Okay, right back at ya. And we will see what we can come up with, and then we will look at the results in the next episode. And then for the ones who really want to look at something different, I'm borrowing from a friend of mine who used to actually conduct photo walks in Cape Town, where they went out on the 15th of the month, every month, and they would shoot at a 15th of a second. So there you go, a nice challenge for you. And I don't think
that means
fine with silhouettes and reflections, but
yeah, it could, I guess.
maybe not. Try and see, and have fun with it, and then share in the results with us.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing what you guys do with these challenges using the recipes and maybe even adding on top of that with these additional challenges. Pretty excited to see what you do.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm keeping a close eye on what you're posting in the next couple of weeks, Ritchie.
Yep.
Yes, so as always, we would love to see your images for the next show. So upload them here. Use the QR code or the actual link. You can screenshot this, but we also have the links in the description of the show. We will have them on the website, and whenever we blog about it, we will make sure that the link is prominent so that you don't, get away without uploading images. What I want to point out, what we really need to make sure is, because now we are shooting with lots of different recipes, is you need to put the name of the recipe into the file name before you upload, so that we know what recipe you shot with.
Yes, and I can't emphasize that enough. Make sure that, I think when you do upload them, there's an option to rename it before you submit it. But if you can, on your computer or phone or whatever, change the name of the file to include the recipe name, whatever method works good for you, just make sure you pick a method and you do it, and so we know what recipe was used for your photos.
Yes, because if you remember our slideshows, we will create a similar slideshow for the next episode, and we will look at the images, and we obviously want to give everyone the opportunity to learn from and learn with the recipe. So what kind of looks you get from them. So we want to make sure that we associate the correct images with those recipes in the name
Yes.
of. So yes, I'm sure we will repeat this a lot, but please try. It's also in the description of the Dropbox upload folder, just to make sure. And that is what we have to share with you.
Yep. Yay!
So we hope that gives you enough to think about and to work with. But if there are any questions right now, now is a very good time to look at them. We are not doing too badly with time, Ritchie. I might.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. And Bjorn has a good point here. Don't be put off by people saying this is not street photography, because you will get that. You'll get these people that are, maybe call themselves purists or whatever it is, that have a certain idea of this is what street photography is. And if it doesn't fall into that, then it's not. I would take a loose definition over a strict definition, I think.
Absolutely. If you think this captures what we've been talking about, we give you the green light to call it street photography, and we are not black and white here. It's about having fun, enjoying your images, and enjoying the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan says, become part of the environment before taking pictures. That's yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Well said, Dan. Thank you. And then, if you have questions, if you're watching this as a recording and you have questions, please ask them in the comments. We will definitely still answer them then, even if you're a little bit late. No problem at all.
Yeah, we are here for you, so definitely don't hesitate.
Yes.
Classic Kodak, another classic Kodak convert right there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I feel you. Excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great to see you back, Bo. And yeah, another classic Kodak.
That might be the most popular one.
Oh, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And 500T, Dan loves it. Yes.
Yeah,
I think
so he's got some experience with it.
interesting.
When Andreas has been using Agfa Scala for black and white, so that's really cool.
There you go. Some really great stuff here. Some good feedback. So hopefully, this means that we've chosen quite well in our selection. Björn loves public transport places, beaches, markets, museum, all the great for street photography.
Yes, those are good tips.
Yeah, absolutely. Beaches, if you have them.
Thank you, Dan.
Please do. if you like.
Yeah.
And Dan also has a gear tip. He always carries a few small bills in each front pocket when doing street photography. Quite a few handlers where I live makes it safer if you decide to give them money. Okay.
Yeah, and
That,
and also like if there's street performers or stuff,
mm,
like if I'm gonna take their picture, I'm gonna drop a few dollars in their
yes.
case or jar or whatever they have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good way to go about it. What
Hmm.
I've started doing is that a lot of people, in our um, cities and um, country, they don't have photographs of themselves. So I carry around an Instax printer with me so that I
Mm.
can see that photo with them. And that's, been working quite well as well. They're quite happy to be photographed
Oh,
because
that's awesome.
yeah, because I think it's especially when you are in areas where there are a lot of tourists, people react differently,
Hmm.
at least in our parts of the world. Then they kind of expect to get something in return, and prints
Okay.
really work quite well. So keep that in mind also. And there's Jerry. He's saying he uses typically Kodachrome 64, so he'll definitely focus on the other recipes. Great stuff.
Okay. Cool. That's a big part of why we do this,
Mhm.
is if there's something you haven't tried, well, now you have an opportunity to try it.
Yes, exactly. And Björn also loves a tilt screen. He won't ever buy a camera without it again. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
I could have told ya. A leaf shutter on X100V makes a 1/15th of a second very doable. That is very
Yeah.
true.
And you use the ND filter
Yeah.
to allow less light in. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely something that's something to play around with and experiment. Joe's asking, is there a real downside other than time to process to shoot in RAW and then use Xraw Studio to convert them to recipes after the fact?
Well, that's a good question. And I also noticed the hashtag
Yes.
straight out camera live. Yeah. So thank you, Joe, for volunteering. So that's cool. But I don't know if there's any downside. I don't use XRAW Studio myself. I know a lot of people do. It's basically the same thing as doing it in camera, because your camera is processing it. The only downside I can think of is if a recipe, if you shoot in DR 100, for example, you can't go back and apply any recipe that uses DR 200 or DR 400. So if you're going to do that, I guess my recommendation would be to use DR 400 at all times, so that way any recipe is game.
Yeah.
Um,
I've
Other than that,
actually,
I don't really have any problems with that or any challenges I can think of.
yeah. So I've come across this recently because I, you know, shoot in RAW and JPEG. And if I need to experiment with recipes or just get a bit more of a feel for it or whatever may be, I convert with the Xraw Studio. But I find that if I actually photograph with a recipe in the field, I take the photo differently than if I convert it afterwards. So that's anything from exposure to even composition. I find that it's a more authentic experience that if you shoot it with the recipe in camera. But
Yeah, those are
if
some good points because some recipes call you to increase the exposure or decrease the exposure or something like that, and you're obviously not doing that in the field. And then the other thing is that when you have that recipe programmed into your camera, you're seeing what you see is what you get, and
yeah,
you're seeing it and composing for what you're seeing. But if you're doing it after the fact, you don't have that opportunity to see it in the field exactly what that's going to look like, and
yes,
maybe you would compose it differently depending on how the recipe renders it, that kind of thing.
yeah. So I definitely feel that way. There's nothing wrong with it, and there is
Mm.
a great learning opportunity to use Extra Studio, I feel. But I've just noticed that I just wish I'd taken that photograph with that recipe at the time and not converted afterwards. It would have looked differently. And Björn says he strongly prefers prime lenses for street seen too many people with zoom lenses missing the shot while zooming. With a prime lens, one will quickly know where to stand.
Yeah. I like prime lenses in general, period. I prefer them over zooms just for general photography. But like if you have like a prime lens, maybe a wide angle prime that's pre-focused, I mean, as soon as you see it, you can capture the shot without doing anything. So I mean, it's super quick, and you don't miss that moment.
Yes, absolutely. I guess the traditional approach still holds true today, 100 years later.
Yep.
And Torsten is asking a practical question. Can we also use recipes other than the 4 recommended? Well, you can always use other recipes, but for uploading for our challenge, we would like to keep it to those 4 recipes, and you use those, which is why we want you to put the name of the recipe that you used in the file name, so that we can show off what street photography can look like when you use the recipes that we recommended.
Yes. It was a great question, by the way.
Yes. And then there's Björn again, who is referencing his 3 ways of photographing street photography. We had him on the show last year when he was also talking about that. Excuse me. So if you want to go back to that, he's had some very valuable information to share. He's talking about his fishing, following, and for those moments when that all just happens all of a sudden in front of the lens.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen that episode with Bjorn in it, you want to go back and watch that.
Yes, absolutely. And Jerry says fishing versus hunting. Fishing works better in large cities where there are more people. If they are very interesting but not in a great position, I'll often ask to take their picture before they move away.
Yeah.
Also,
And that's you know, if you're not nervous about that, you know, I think if you've never done that before, it's probably very nerve-wracking the first time. But if you can overcome that fear and speak up and say, "Hey, do you mind if I take your picture?" I've done that before a few times, and I don't know if I've ever had anybody say no. I think everybody's always said yes. So the worst that will happen is I'll say no.
Yes. But it's, also a really nice way to start a conversation with them, maybe learn something about them or
Yes.
about the place where you are. So it's maybe not easy when you're not an outgoing person, but it's definitely worthwhile, that conversation.
Yes.
All right. And I guess that's the end of the question. It's definitely the end of our time and the show. And so all that's left is that we point you to our next show, which is what we call our Q&A session for the street photography. It will be on the 30th of March. Like we said earlier, the last Thursday of the month. And we will be looking at all the photographs that you've taken. And we will have more of a discussion like at the end right now of the show. So we hope you can join us again, and make sure to take this time now to take lots of photographs and then share your favorite 3 with us before the time.
Mark your calendars now for that next show, and get out there in just a few minutes and grab your camera and hit the streets.
Yes, and don't forget to subscribe. We want to grow this channel, so invite others, bring the crowds, and let's
smash that button.
That button. Yes, do it. Alrighty-o, it's been absolutely phenomenal. This time went by.
Nope.
But here we are already. Time to say goodbye. The people at the bottom, they are waving furiously, telling to wrap it up.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us and for participating. And I look forward to your pictures. And I had a really great time today, and I hope you did too.
Yes, it's been absolutely phenomenal. You guys were absolutely wonderful. It's been great chatting to you again, Ritchie, as always.
Yes.
And I can't wait to do it again on the 30th of March. Up until then, it's time to say goodbye. You have yourselves a beautiful day, a wonderful evening, and have fun in Korea and wherever you all are. To take lots of photographs and join us again next time.
Bye, Natalie. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Ritchie. It's been fabulous.
Good night, and thank you for watching. We hope you enjoy the show.